everyone. So I've got the after lunch slot, but it's okay because you're all going to be doing things rather than just me talking about data. And so the first thing I thought I'd say is I already can sense the apprehension in the room about the fact that it's the word data and then positive change, because we sent out an email, or David did for me, sent out an email with a survey saying, please complete it. It's completely anonymous and it came from David. We won't even know. So how many responses did we get for that survey? Looking at how many people there are in the room, what do you think we got? What do you think? 10. Lower. 6. Okay, so data is really powerful, and that bit of information already tells me that there might be slight apprehension and also maybe a misunderstanding about the power that data can actually have. Okay, so bear with me, and I hope that I might have shifted some mindsets next talk. Notice how everything's linked today. Thank you, David. How this actually will all fit together. So first thing that I would like you to do then, so it's lots of activities. Okay, how would you define data? 30 seconds, have a think, talk to the person next to you. How would you define data? Go. Okay, brilliant. So I've got to stay here, haven't I? Right. Sorry, it's really quite difficult. So I had some engagement about talking about data. Excellent. So we've got a good start. Okay. Anybody like to volunteer what they thought, what their definition of data was? Anybody like to volunteer definition? Yeah. Julie.
We just said information.
Information. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody want to elaborate on information? Okay.
That is possibly measurable.
Oh, okay, excellent. So we've got measurable, we've got collection of information. Nobody's actually. Oh, Phil.
We said qualitative and or quantitative.
Aha. So sometimes I believe people are scared because it's numbers. But what was brilliant is you said information, first of all. So I just gathered on here some definitions for data. So some definitions will say facts and statistics. Others will say known, that they're known, or it could be assumed facts. Some people think of it in terms of computer data and input and putting things in. But then other people just say, actually, it's just the pursuit of knowledge, finding out things. And I suppose I should say I'm a chemist. And so I quite like that information gathering. But then what I like to do is put that into a process and go, well, I've got all this information, so what we're going to do with it? Because I believe we're in an information-rich age. There's loads of information out there, and our students and us, we can go and get that information. But that's of no use if we don't do something with it. So it's about, let's gather some information, but let's work out what we're going to do with it. That's what it is for me. And I come back to this. I always used to tell my students, this is the most amazing bit of data collection, because someone's gone, there's all this information about these elements. How can we organize it? How can we do something with it so it's going to help us to solve problems and do things? So I said, this is the poster I always used to have up in my room because I thought it was amazing. Not that I didn't have pop stars or whatever it was, but for me, that just shows the power of getting that information and organizing it in a particular way. And so that's just a bit about me. So types of data, loads of different types of data. And what we're going to look at today is, what data are you collecting in your school? What data maybe could you collect? And what can you do with it? Because that's the whole point. It's about you and your school today. So I work for that's missing. There was a framework on there that's just decided not to load at the moment. But hey ho, I have a little pretty infographic over here that we work on a framework because we go into schools and support them to gather their data, because we know how busy everybody is. And our framework looks at ISI, Ofsted, Cambridge International and COBIS all blended together, because I've worked in independent schools for all of my Korea, but then overseas as well. And we all work to benchmarks, we all work to frameworks. And so we can use that, blend those together so that we really can share what exceptional looks like. And we can do that if we gather information about each setting. And the picture that was there, anybody that was at the suppliers event last night, it's based on 3 things. And that's people, which we've already talked loads about, pedagogy, which Simon has already talked about too, and then place. So, and Simon talked about that as well. So we can gather data on all of those things. And we work with a group called EnvoPlan who actually design these learning spaces to make sure they have impact. But the only way they have impact is if we've actually purposely designed them. And the only way we can do that is to find out what you want to do with those spaces. Is it a STEAM room? I mean, I used to teach in science labs with fixed benches. I can't get collaborative scientists when it's fixed benches, not as easily anyway. I can't get technology into those spaces because the gas taps and the sinks were there and the devices on the table with all of that. It just wasn't going to happen. So you can actually make your lives easier, but you've got to gather the data first. So I've said a little bit about this. It's about people. You need to understand all your stakeholders. Why do they want to change or don't they want to change? Where exactly, as Rob said, where are they on that journey? Who have you got to buy into this change? Well, get the information, ask them. The place, we design it on these factors that, as Simon said, it's all been researched. The research is out there. We know that acoustics affect the learning. And when you gather all of this information together, it can be up to 25% actually that it impacts on those students' learning. And it impacts on you too, as Simon was saying, with your voice and your well-being. But it's also the lighting, the heating, the ventilation. It's the colour. So reds, greens, oranges, no. Actually having biophilia and calm colours along with the balance of your light can really improve the learning. The furniture, so it's flexible, so we can do different things. The storage, tidy mind. Well, you can easily get distracted. Apparently, smiley faces are the biggest distraction. So where you have the smiley faces, yeah. So the latest research is saying that the smiley faces really distract people because it's faces, it's the expressions. And so people look and just automatically they're distracted. And then, of course, the really important one, if you want to use the technology, have you got the space to be able to do that? Or do you need to put 2 boards in so that everybody can access things? And there's a lot of research out there that shows the impact of all these separately. But again, the researcher in me won't go into it. Not today, anyway. It comes down to the teaching and learning, though, doesn't it? And we can work with your frameworks to say, well, you want to improve the vocabulary? Do you want to improve the questioning? Do you want to improve the behaviour for learning, the feedback? What strategy is it? But the most important bit is to find out at the start, what actually should you be trying to improve? How do you know that? So you go away from the conference and you go, I've just heard this amazing person talk about the power of questioning. Your questioning could have been it's brilliant anyway. And so that's brilliant to focus on it. But have you looked at the other things? Have you looked at the other things in the classroom? So it's about collecting the information. So we use a design thinking process, and this is actually being taught in some schools now as part of their curriculum. Linking quite often with, sorry everybody, linking with design technology. So it's empathizing, it's getting to know the school, getting to know you. It's then defining the problem, linking it to your strategies, and then coming up with the solutions together. And that's what we're going to do today, and then testing them out. So a little bit of data to show things that we've found out before you start thinking about your own setting. When we asked one question about some physical spaces to a group of schools, 24% couldn't actually control the air that was flowing through. They can't control natural light, acoustics. They didn't know what biophilia was, big thing out there at the moment, and the plants and how that can really help in lots of different, for different reasons. And nobody knew the humidity levels of their learning environments, and that can really impact on the quality. So the recommendations back to this school was smart meters, blinds, acoustic baffles, thinking about the wallpaper actually, and biophilia. So we go back with some really simple recommendations once we've done the overview. linking to what Simon was saying again, we asked questions about layout, and the responses said they didn't change the layout of the classroom at all. It was just exactly the same every day. Now that's for this particular school when we asked about them. And so we then recommended some training. So I went and did a workshop about how you can set up your classroom differently. And the outcome from that workshop was the MFL department got rid of their desks. And what was brilliant was they got extra desks for the exams. It's like, yay, we need more desks. Well, they just got a load more desks. So you can repurpose things, actually. And the reason that MFL wanted to get rid of their desks was because they wanted everything to be focused on conversations. And why did they need the desks? They didn't actually. And so you had to think about the flow. So when the students come in, how do you organise that space? Where do you put their bags? What are the expectations? Are you using devices? But that can all come from a department meeting discussion. How do you want to do it? But that department had a real buzz about them. They felt really excited about this change. And they used this information to bring about the change. And therefore, hopefully, we haven't done this bit yet, an impact on their grades. So we can collect and monitor those grades to see the impact that has had. But there's other things. It could be outdoor spaces. You want to get the students outside. It could be that science, you don't always want to be in the labs because you want to go and do other things. There's a whole host of things, but it's starting that conversation that's really important. Sustainability is a big thing that we're noticing at the moment when we're collecting this information. Actually, they're talking about it in the departments, but a lot of schools haven't really either disseminated what their plans are for sustainability. And the students are really, really interested in this and what the school's doing about it. So you can actually get it into your curriculum and start using and asking the students what they would like to see. And they'll give you ideas for your strategic plans and your policies. A lot of things that we're seeing are requests for modular builds, solar panels, biomass generators, and also the LED and movement sensor lighting tends to be the most common thing that's been done in schools already. Couple of other bits of data things that we've collected: teaching and learning, going in, observing lessons, but asking. In this particular school, they weren't really using vocabulary that much. They weren't using checkpoints. And so they were their teaching and learning team were going to go back and go, right, how can we do that? We want to improve the vocabulary because we looked at the information, we looked at the data, and we see that they're not using it. So then they can put in an action plan for it. There was other things. They were using hands down approaches. Half of them were using flipped learning. But what this did was opened up a whole wealth of questions about teaching and learning and what did it mean for them? Because they had a policy, they had a framework, but you can see that it wasn't necessarily being used as effectively as it could. So we asked some questions, and all of a sudden, that ownership of change and improvement, they're taking ownership of it and want to drive that change. This other school were using attainment data amazingly, tracking all the grades, everything. But they weren't thinking about the attitudes to learning at all. And they didn't really know how to do that. So it's like, well, how can we link those together? And that's going to have a really powerful outcome. The last bit of data from a school that we've collected is about professional development and how this links. And quite often we find that whilst professional development is discussed and they might have a plan that's for a year, actually the training wasn't necessarily having the impact that they want. But by asking those questions, you can then improve what you'd like to achieve. So it's all about asking questions. So how would we group these things together? I would say that all the questions that we gather and information that we feed back is based on these different areas: content, interactions between people, strategies that are used for instructions, assessments, engagement, and then it's linked back to the environment and then technology. But it always puts the student in the middle. So that's the kind of data that we look at. It's quite a lot when you think about it. I'll skip over that one. So I've talked a lot about the data that we've gathered from different schools. Now it's your turn. Okay. So you've got Post-it notes on your tables. Can you, on a Post-it note, just write down each bit of information, if you like, let's use that word, that you collect? Just on, so one on a Post-it note, write down one bit of information you collect. So that might be attendance. Okay. So doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just to get you thinking. That's fine. So just get the conversation going. That's fine.
Okay.
One on each.
Yeah, one on each post. So we see how many we get. For those of you, you could do this online too. Just see how many we get. How many bits of data or information are we collecting?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, time, and I'm loving how many post-it notes there are on the table. This is brilliant. Next activity, we will look at each other's. Don't worry. Also on the chat, they're using, and I'll load these other messages. They're using the chat to record various bits and pieces as well. But the next activity, we've got all of this information, so now we're going to try and categorize it. There's different ways of categorizing it. All I'm going to ask you to do for this one is say, can you categorize it into what's the data that's about people? Maybe attitudes, something like that. What's the data that's about the teaching and learning? Academic, maybe grades. What is about the environment? And then we'll see if we have larger groups of data in particular areas. So see if you can categorize your different bits of data. People, environment, yeah, and teaching and learning, pedagogy. So thanks everybody online. So we're just going to categorize them if you can. Parent response to workshops, evaluations, yeah.
How you have said.
Oh, let me go back to that. Risk assessment, yeah, perfect. Right. So another activity to go after this. So would anybody like to summarize that what they the learning, I suppose, from that bit? So you've found a list of things of data, you've categorized them. What do you think that's shown you about that little bit of information collection that you do in your spaces? What did it show?
We track more about people than we do about place, massively.
Okay.
But a few of them would probably go into a few categories, or we could link them together. That one issue might be because of another one that would be in it. Yeah. It's and the picture that was missing from my one of the slides was that actually the three, it was a diagram where all three, the people, the pedagogy and the place, were all overlapped, because at the middle, that's where the magic actually happens. That's your culture, that's your community. And I think I've had the opportunity to wander around, and you guys can shortly as well, but everybody's category on the people is the biggest one, because that's what it really is all about, the people. But it depends how you use that data as well. You might have actually been gathering it from a people's perspective, but maybe actually it could inform something about the place, or it could inform something about the teaching and learning. So it depends on, have you decided really why are you collecting that data in the first place? What's the point of collecting that bit of information? And if you're really clear on that, it helps you to put it in a category, and then it helps you to actually do something with it, because we can collect loads of it with loads of efficient ways of doing it now. But what do you want to do with it? So the next activity then is getting to think about something, either one of those data collections that you actually do and thinking about it in a different way, or maybe something that you've noticed that you don't collect by doing this and talking to people. So what data information could you collect to support a program of change that you would like to see? So it's quite, but so you want to see this, what could you do? So, and I've got some big bits of paper. Sometimes it's great to step back from the technology and use the paper. So there's going to be think of these things: the who is it going to affect? The what is it you're going to do? When would you do it? Where? Why? And then how are you going to do it? And so we're going to try in the last 10 minutes to see if we can think about that. So I've got you think about it, pair, and then we'll share. We'll have hopefully someone feel brave enough to stand up with their card, piece of card and show. So, which category is your data falling into? And then answer those questions. If I just over here, we've got some big bits of paper. So you can divide that up however you want, but can you answer those questions? The how, who, what, where, when, and why for your data. Okay. And any questions? Do you know what I do? You know what Right. Yeah. Right. I'm conscious of the time. And everybody's just really getting stuck into it. And I love the way in which some people have drawn the flowers and answered the different questions. Other people have made lists, and everybody's picking on lots of different points of information that you could collect. But we're not quite, some of us haven't quite finished. But what I will say, it's the process that you've gone through, the thinking about it. But I think we've probably got 2 minutes. Would anybody like to share theirs, or would you like me to feed back one of them just to show you the different things that everybody's done? Phil?
Don't just say one of the things I'm a fair few years out of the classroom now, but my mantra was always that we need to measure what we value, not value what we measure. And I think the problem often is we value things that we can easily measure, but actually the things that we need to measure we can't, so we tend not. So my son, for example, would get when he was in Key Stage 1, he got a level 3 for reading, despite that he's never read a book in his life, and still hasn't at 28. He said he read Horrid Henry once, but I don't think he did. But nobody ever asked him what his achievement levels were for curiosity, imagination, friendship, relationships.
Yeah.
That's it, I'm done.
Yeah. I believe, just like you, Phil, it is possible to actually design frameworks where you can look at those things.
Back to that qualitative versus quantitative as well.
Absolutely. And from the people that did answer the survey is quite broad. So it looks at the quality. So it's talking about quality, it's talking about character education, it's talking about then physical environment. And the bits that everybody put down collectively that were poor were the character education, the tracking of that, whether that's blended with online learning. So actually, even though we only had a small data pool from this, it was that area that you all identified that was something that you weren't necessarily tracking or looking at, which I thought was really interesting. But if more of you would like to go back and fill that in, then what I can do is I can feed that back to you as a collective and say, as a group here, this is what we were saying about these different areas, and I will do that if you would like to as an end result. But so what we've got here is pupil progress data. Over here it was about looking at light levels and how we could track those. And one thing we said was with the who, it was, well, actually your students could go around and collect the light levels because that's your science project, and so you've already engaged the students actually in collecting that information. Here we've got what did you decide on here?
We pivoted to measuring efficiency in printing.
Great ideas, because we were talking about handwriting here and where the base levels for hand, that was getting really complicated. Over here, what did you guys look at?
We've looked at changing that and looked at the English and math.
Okay. You guys are about the learning environment and how that could impact on the pupils. So we've got such a variety of things, but I hope that just this session has just given you some headspace just to think about information in a different way, and it could be really powerful, and it's what you choose to gather and how you choose to use it. So thank you very much for being so engaged and getting stuck in with all the post-it notes and paper. So thank you very much.
Thank you.